G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and so far a fantastic weekend. Now today, not like always, we actually don't have that much to go over. Of course, we'll look at the maps and we'll look at some geolocations and some footage as well. We'll look at some strikes in Luhansk. We're going to talk about land concessions and what Zelensky has said and the future of warfare and where there may be some sort of psyop going on here as well. We need to talk about what President Macron has said regarding French troops within Ukraine training Ukrainian soldiers, how that would work, why that would be happening, and we'll go over more of that. But where we want to start is F-16s. Now, F-16s, like many other weapons, have been hailed as some sort of Wunderwaffen, like wonder weapon, heading into Ukraine. Now, we know this was announced over a year ago, and we know the training will take a long time. While we're talking on fighter jets, yesterday we did get reports that President Macron said that Mirage 2000s will head to Ukraine and will be on the ground by the end of the year. And we've been expecting these F-16s realistically any day. We're hearing from many different areas. It's in a week, it's in a month. And even a few months ago, people speculating about some of the attacks we were seeing were off F-16s. But now the ISW has come out and really thrown a spanner in the works of what is happening here. Now, I think so much, I believe, from a war reporter, too much has been put on the F-16s. That people are hanging their hat on this is going to turn everything around and it's a wonder weapon, and putting that on morale as far as territory, all of this. And if and when that doesn't happen, well, that massive backfire, similar to what we've seen now with the Charlies, the Leopards, and the Abrams. We could have always said, no, there's no single weapon that's a wonder weapon. It's working in combined arms of these, which from experience in the military, combined arms mechanized maneuver warfare doesn't take weeks. You're average at years at best. But anyway, so much has been built on these that ISW is now reporting limitations on Western capabilities to train partner pilots on F-16 fighter jets are reportedly creating bottlenecks that will affect Ukraine's ability to effectively field F-16s in the future. Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, and Belgium plan to send over 60 F-16 aircraft by summer 2024. The Ukrainian officials, lawmakers, US, Danish, Romanian F-16 pilot programs can only train a limited number of Ukrainian pilots. Politico has reported US Air Force spokesman Lauren Falls stated US National Guard is planning to train 12 Ukrainian pilots by the end of September 2024. Now, one thing I will say in here is we know the US can train and field far, far more pilots than that, but there's no full commitment there. The Danish training facility is reportedly training 8 Ukrainian fighter pilots, but this facility reportedly closed in November 24, and the Romanian training facility is reported not yet operational. A full squadron of 20 aircraft requires 40 pilots. A former Department of Defense official reportedly stated that if the current training constraints continue, Ukraine will only have enough pilots for a full squadron at the end of 2025. So we're now talking a year and a half away. And if they come in at the end of 2025, well, one, we have no idea how the war is going to look by then, if there even is a war. And we know the end of 2025, well, that's going to be heading into winter. So for supporting on ground operations, it's going to be mid-2026. Do we see that supporting then frontline ops? Yes, of course, air defense and all this, but still, Ukraine will not be able to use all the Western provider aircraft as effectively as possible until the necessary number of Ukrainian pilots complete training. Select Western countries have indicated that Ukraine will be permitted to use F-16s for strikes within Russia, but Ukraine's ability to operate F-16s near the international border is contingent on Ukraine's ability to destroy air defense assets in Russia. And this is what we've seen. We've seen a few S-400s, S-300s destroyed recently. We thought that was shaping for these aircraft realistic any day now, and that's indeed that's going to be a big aspect of if and where these can fly. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated on May 18, Ukraine needs 120 or 130 advanced fighter aircraft to achieve air parity. So if we take in this 2-to-1 of pilots to airframe, then Ukraine needs 240, 260 pilots. But with these constraints, a lot of problem. And this is the ISW. The ISW is pro-Ukraine as it gets. with Russia. That is, Russia's biggest advantage is Western imposed restrictions prohibiting Ukraine from using Western provided weapons to strike military targets inside Ukraine. Ukraine may be able to set conditions to have Ukrainian aviation operate in the air domain to support Ukrainian ground operations if Ukraine is able to sufficiently destroy Russian air defense assets within Russia using long-range strike capabilities, obtain sufficient cadre of pilots capable of flying F-16, and receive a timely delivery and sufficient number of F-16. So we need the pilots, the people. We've always spoken the biggest problem with fighter aircraft is people. You need the pilots, and it's not fly, take off, land. Like I said yesterday, that this is going to be heading into the most challenging environment we've ever seen jet fighter aircraft enter. That you're probably better off pushing the training back a little bit rather than losing planes. But it's one thing of these planes being used in an air defense capacity, shooting down missiles, long-range strikes, Scalp, Storm Shadow. It's another thing on the front line supporting ground operations. I was talking to a guy who was like, there's different aspects of training, but air-to-air, very difficult. Air-to-ground, very difficult. And these are all modules of training that take a long time, not to just do, but be proficient at on the ground. And this is looking like it's turning back, and this isn't as commonly talked about as I think it should be with the expectations that were placed upon these systems. But I want to talk about, and I don't have it on me right now, but yesterday I skimmed over something which I shouldn't have, that we've seen a lot of strikes and a lot of missiles heading out into this oblast here, striking against an airfield there that has many of the fighters that launched the Scalp and Storm Shadows, and last night was no exception. Ukraine said they intercepted all the missiles, but regardless of that, we haven't really seen recently Scalp or Storm Shadow really being used. What asks a couple of questions there, but yeah, it looks like maybe the French Mirage will be the first planes we see. We're not sure when that training started, but it'll be interesting to see what comes of this. And like I always say, you never hang your hat on a single weapon system. Like the Abrams, because let's say the Abrams, the whole messaging changed. It went from these are going to roll across blah, 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 modern this, and then everyone, when they started getting destroyed, which we knew, it's armor, it's a war, you're going to lose equipment. It doesn't mean the equipment's bad, it means it's a war. Then everyone went, oh, this is old, outdated tech, blah, 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 and they just had a full switch on this. F-16 is a great fighter aircraft. It's only as good as the pilot in it and the weapons that are actually on the rails. And like my friend said, these are a taxi these days. It really matters what's on the rails and if it can actually get into then the fight and where they're going to be. Now, let's talk about what Zelensky has said over in France at the moment. Rejects territorial concessions to Russia. There are no lines for evil. Can Putin win the war? No, because you and I have no right to lose. Can this war end on the lines that exist now? No, because there is no lines for evil. Not 80 years ago, not now. And if someone tries to draw temporary lines, it will only give a pause before new war. Hitler overcame line after line, and so does Putin today. Can we win this battle? Absolutely yes, we can. Ukraine and therefore Europe and therefore France. I'm sure of it, and so in France believed in freedom when D-Day had not taken place, and the landing day as well as the day of European victory was inevitable. We've seen Zelensky over then at the D-Day memorials as well. One thing I will say, these memorials, this is part of these are basically a mass funeral. It's the same as like Anzac Day and things like this here. Mate, wear a suit. Don't wear a T-shirt to a funeral. I'm sorry, but it just is, I think, disrespectful. I know people, oh, you're nitpicking, blah, blah, blah. You're at an area where many, many men gave their lives for this. It's basically a funeral, minute silence, things like this. Come on. But let's talk about this, because many people are saying, and I speak to a lot of guys who are saying, look, how much shift of these lines are we going to see? We don't know. How costly it would be for Russia or Ukraine to break through these areas is going to be just massive. We're not sure if either country has the manpower to actually achieve this huge break-in of where then these lines sit. And I've had a lot of guys reach out to me and say, well, this is actually why Putin wants a negotiation. We keep hearing Putin say, I'm open to peace negotiation on the realistic situation happening on the ground, blah, 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 that reflects the situation currently. But if a line is drawn now, Ukraine would then, have a land concession. If it was right now, it had to end. And then NATO and EU membership not only would take time, but it may not even be on the table with that happening unless it was, that's not our land anymore. What, of course, has a huge problem, and everyone knows this. But the morale and feeling towards the government of a situation, a loss like this, would be absolutely shattered, to the point where I think so many units have lost and sacrificed so much, they may either continue fighting on their own, or we could even see some level of mutiny. And many then people would not return or would leave once the laws are lifted for 18 to 60 if it ended that way. And what my contacts are telling me is maybe this is why Russia's pushing for this, because they know that would be the situation if there was a concession, and amongst this situation, Russia would then launch another attack and take advantage of that situation and the morale and problems then, and have more of a success there. I know that's some gymnastic thinking, maybe even conspiratorial, but that is interesting to think about. Could it be wanting this to then take advantage of the situation there? We know Ukraine has promised its people a victory, and that victory is nothing short of the 1991 border. So people are expecting a victory, and those with fallen family and friends are expecting that sacrifice to be made in the name of that complete victory and liberation. The question becomes, what happens if then this is not the outcome? And how then, if that isn't the outcome, will Russia take advantage of that? I think that the complete liberation of all these territories through military might alone is very unlikely. Now, what is more likely is a Russian withdrawal due to some other event, but pure militarily, as far as the losses we're going to know you're going to have to just take to be able to push into somewhere like into Crimea or Donetsk, we haven't seen anything either by Russia or Ukraine yet of that scale in this war. Maybe when Russia got onto the outskirts of Kyiv, but regardless, it's going to be very, very interesting to see. Now, let's have a look at a couple of maps and some geolocated footage here as well. Now, everyone's seen this footage of the Bradley versus BTR. Now, it's on the Telegram if you'd like to watch it, but in my take, both vehicles are probably absolutely stuffed, at least all the optics, and I think both vehicles actually had a jam in the turret, got some hits off, and the turret actually couldn't move to not then traverse and hit back. But what is interesting to me is let's have a look at where this then took place. Now, the video, it's on the Telegram if you'd like to see. But this is where then it's geolocated to, and it's geolocated to here, Sokil and Solovov. And we see then that the BTR drops off Russian troops in here. It obviously takes some casualties on top of it too, because you're getting hit by bloody massive rounds on top of that. But let's have a look at actually where this is. So here is Ukraine, the center, the capital of Kyiv, red areas, occupied since 22, purple since 2014. Now we'll come down Donetsk Oblast, and then we're looking for then Avdiivka, Solovov, Sokil. And as you'll see just today, you can see then that grey zone has moved up because, let's have a look at where this is. Right in here is where then that engagement took place. And there is some wild, wild footage coming out on this war of engagements like that. Now, where we're going to move to, and the only update we have then on this map today is then Chassiv Yar, and we can see moving through these other blocks. Now, this should have been red for a while. We've seen a lot of fighting in and around here, and then the grey zone should be expanded, I believe, right up to here, but we can see that Russia is extending this prong from then yesterday on other maps showing, and then today in here around the center. Now, what's going to be interesting in this is how Ukraine then fall back across then the waterway, and how then Russia choose to cross this waterway then itself. But this is updated to here. Now, it hasn't shown what we were hearing claims yesterday of in Kalinivka and Bodanivka, a pushback from Ukraine yesterday, but we're not seeing that then on this map. But let's have a look at some footage here. Now, firstly, I'll show you the geolocation. Now, the reason we know this is here, so let's have a look right on this map here. So we'll come down, and then let's have a look, see where this road comes out on the angle here. It's right sitting just in here. The reason we know where this footage is actually because the video of this destroyed Canadian MRAP off another video. We're presuming the same. So this are Russian troops operating within Chassiv Yar here. Now, what I will say is we can see these guys then moving cover to cover. And it is interesting that this is the MRAP we're talking about, of why we know where this footage is. Now, first you can see the destruction, but I do wonder how much intel is coming from these drones to guys like this on the ground live. Like, how much is there a line of communication directly between the drone operator and these guys then operating door to door? Because that would be a huge amount of eyes in the sky. Now, we know there is a degree of that happening, but to what degree, we are not sure. And then we can see these other two troops move then across through this terrain here. So obviously, moving building to building, there's at high readiness of what's going down here, an incredibly heavy fighting area, but like we said, of where that then is. Now, let's talk about France training within Ukraine. France wants to finalise a coalition of countries to send military instructors to Ukraine. And Macron has said, we are not at war with Russia. We do not want an escalation, but we want to do everything we can to help Ukraine resist. It is an escalation when Ukraine asks us to train mobilise soldiers on its sovereign soil. No. Now, I've spoken about this. If Australia was at war, I'd understand it because it's so hard to move soldiers around. But I just don't understand the risk versus reward of training Ukrainian soldiers within Ukraine, other than, maybe some small training camps, but on large, move out into here. It's a day on a bus or a car to then train in facilities that have no risk of a bloody missile coming into it, maybe even better training facilities, more instructors, all of this. I don't get why. Well, I do get why. I believe it is dipping the toe in the water of, okay, how's Russia react to instructors? Right, okay, third line, then second line, then eventually we end up front line. So climbing that ladder of escalation, just like we saw, a couple of Humvees be used in Belgorod Oblast, and then, okay, how did Russia respond to that? Right, let's throw a few shells over. Right, let's throw an ATACMS over. Oh, not ATACMS, let's throw a HIMARS over. Right, and it's that ladder of escalation to see how then your opponent escalates. So that's why Russia is doing it. But if it's purely about training, it doesn't make much sense. We already know that we will not be alone, and we will use the next few days to organise a broader coalition to respond to Ukraine's request. So it'll be with Baltic states in there, and we will see how then that goes into the future. I won't be surprised if we see it. How effective will it be? Well, again, we are not 100% sure, but we know Ukraine's biggest issue right now is manpower on the front line. Now, we need to talk about these strikes in the Luhansk Oblast. Now, it's being absolutely reported a million different ways of what this is. So, Ausint reporter, he's had a really great reputation. So let's say he says an old school building in the Russian-occupied city of Luhansk was struck early by a Ukrainian ATACMS tactical ballistic missile, resulting in massive structural damage to the building, as well as several nearby residential and commercial high-rises. The school complex was reportedly being used as barracks by elements of the Russian army, with the extent of casualties from the strike currently unknown. But we do know for sure there was at least one civilian killed in here. From then the video, you can see the damage that took place on this photograph here as well. But there's a lot of speculation about what this is. Some Ukrainian pages are saying, yep, it's an ATACMS. Other ones are saying it's air defense, all over the place. The funny thing is, the one saying it's ATACMS are going, yep, it's against a build-up of military forces, blah, blah, blah. The one saying it's air defense, well, it's Russian air defense against residential. In the same video on another page saying it's a Ukrainian HIMARS against a military target. Unknown. But we can see here that this is either been intercepted by something, or I think more likely is maybe an airburst here, but we're not 100% sure on exactly what has gone down there, just like we don't know exactly on the target here as well. So to my eye, it looks like an airburst ATACMS to me. And then there's some different footage here. And this one to me looks almost more, I don't know. It depends on the angle, but we'll speculate over what is what. But legends, that is all that I have for you today. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. There's an interview coming. I hope you'll really, really like it. Thank you. Bye-bye.